Thank you very much. Just waiting for those slides. Great. So I just want to talk to, briefly, I want to give kind of an economic framing of how technology interacts with labor and skills. I'll talk about expertise in particular. So let me start off with a rhetorical question. What's the difference between these two jobs, air traffic controller and crossing guard? Think about it. These are basically the same job, right? The goal is to prevent collisions between vehicles, people, children, et cetera. And yet, crossing guards make less than a quarter of what air traffic controllers do in the United States. Why is that? It's not because they're not doing something socially valuable, right? The answer is expertise. If there's no training or certification required to become a crossing guard, an air traffic controller takes years and then thousands of hours of apprenticeship. So a simple way to say this is if we ran short on crossing guards, we could get air traffic controllers out of their towers to do that job. But if we ran short on air traffic controllers, the reverse would not be true. Why? So let me just define terms. Expertise is what makes labor economically valuable, not spiritually valuable, economically valuable in industrialized countries in particular, means domain-specific knowledge or competency that's needed to accomplish some particular goal, be coding an app, baking a loaf of bread, diagnosing a patient, designing a building, fixing a water heater. For it to have economic value, first of all, the thing it enables must have market value, right? So it's got to be data science, not card tricks. Second of all, it needs to be scarce. Why? Because if everyone is expert, no one is expert, right? Expertise means some people have it, not everyone has it. Why do we care? Because non-expert work pays poorly throughout the world. So in rich countries, waiters, cleaners, janitors, school bus drivers, crossing guards, daycare teachers, some of these are life and death activities. And yet they're poorly paid because they're not expert, because most people can do them. So there's an abundant supply. Now, how does this interact with technology? Well, you might think, technology devalues expertise, right? It just takes over what we do. In fact, the opposite is true. The richest countries in the world that have the most capital, the most technology, right? Labor is the largest share. So in North America, 6 out of every $10 goes first to workers before it goes into the rest of the economy. The world average is only 50%. In parts of North Africa, it's 40%, right? It's actually a paradox, an important one, that over the last 200 years, as we have mechanized and automated so much what we do, we've made ourselves and our time more valuable. So to put the point in reverse, why aren't these tasks already automated, right? Here's a woman using a loom, right? Hundreds of years old. Here's men mining in the DRC without helmets, without pickaxes, without respirators, without headlights. Why? There's technologies that can do all those things. It's because labor is so cheap that there's no reason to automate. So automation is not always the enemy, but it's complicated, right? So if we think back to what Pope Leo the 13th saw when he wrote the Rerum Novarum, he was looking at the latter end, the beginning of the second industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution was brutal. It wiped out the value of artisanal expertise and replaced it with machines, managers, and untrained low-paid workers. This didn't start to change until one, there was a change in democracy, there was a change in labor unions, but also the technology change where suddenly people needed to know something. You needed what I would call mass expertise, whether working on an assembly line or working in an office typing pool. It required literacy and numeracy. These things were very complementary with those technologies of that era. And this gave us 100 years of incredibly rapid prosperity growth, right? I think it's important to remember, we live at the most affluent time of all of human history. There has never been a world middle class until the last 20 years, right? So the Western perspective that it's all going to heck, is crazy, is insane, and it's totally, totally misplaced. Sorry, just editorializing. Okay, so mass expertise. But that changed again during the computer revolution, which displaced a lot of the skilled, routine work that followed well-understood codified rules and procedures that required literacy and numeracy, but also suddenly could be done by machines that could carry out those codified tasks. That led to this bifurcation of the labor market. On the one hand, professionals, technical and managers, they became much more productive because information and calculation was a huge input into what they did. It's like their power source just got much cheaper and faster. But for the people in the middle who couldn't do those things or weren't educated to do those things, they found themselves doing food service, cleaning, security, entertainment, recreation, socially valuable work, poorly paid. Why? It's not expert work, right? Most people can do it. And so that commodification of labor was a big negative. Now we find ourselves in another era. And artificial intelligence, of course, could do things that don't look anything like those codified tasks, right? Learning from unstructured information, doing tasks we think of as creative, discovering and inventing. So what are the implications of that for how expertise is valued? Well, let me say, AI is a tool, like a calculator or a chainsaw. And tools have different properties. Let me put them into two broad buckets. One I'm going to call automation tools. These things remove expertise, right? So a dishwasher, an automatic teller machine, an automatic transmission, electronic toll taker, they say, hey, no one needs to understand how to do this anymore. The machine has got this. And that's valuable, right? It saves time, not all bad. Most tools are not in that bucket. Most tools are collaboration tools. You need to know something to use them, right? A stethoscope, not useful to me, right? Chainsaw, useful to some, dangerous to many. Word processor, right? At least until recently, didn't write for you. It just provided a more efficient way to write. Collaboration tools are a force multiplier for human expertise. They make it more valuable because they shorten the distance between intention and result, and they increase the quality and the variety and the depth with which we can do our work. Good automation tools and good collaboration tools are both widespread, but bad automation interferes with good collaboration. And a lot of AI at this point is at the bad automation stage. So here's an example. This is a tool called Chexpert. It reads chest x-rays and makes a prediction. It says, oh, I think I see pneumonia. I think I see edema. This is a great application for AI, right? Because there's no hard and fast rules. This thing can look at hundreds of thousands of scans, learn the rules of thumb, and make predictions. And yet, surprisingly, radiologists using Chexpert perform worse than radiologists not using it. Why is that? Well, the reason is this tool doesn't communicate effectively. It's designed to automate, not to collaborate. It says, here's what I think. Well, that's not how experts collaborate, right? When experts collaborate, if I think A and you think B and we go into a room, sit down on a chalkboard, you might convince me of B, I might convince you of A, or we both might come out with C, right? Something altogether different. But that can't happen in this case, right? And again, this is this tool is improved, not a knock on the designers, but there is a rush to think that we can automate all the work as opposed to giving people collaboration tools. Automation is hard. It's the end point. It means we've got the whole problem solved. Collaboration is often within reach and automation is out of reach. Collaboration tools, there are many examples, right? So you've probably seen, for writing, using chatbot helps improve, it pulls up the bottom end. We see this in customer service. But let me give you another example that I think is much more illustrative. This isn't really about AI. Let me say it anyway. The occupation of nurse practitioner in the United States barely existed 20 years ago. Now there are almost 500,000 of them. They make $130,000 a year. They're expected to grow by 40% in the next decade. A nurse practitioner is a registered nurse with an additional master's degree that in many states allows that person to diagnose, to treat, and prescribe. They do many things that only physicians could do a few years ago. Right? And it's not a result of technology. Actually, this is a result of women fighting to create a new credential, right? Create a scope of practice, a curriculum, and a credential that allow them to do this work. But now they are heavily supported by technology, right? Electronic medical records, diagnostic software, software that looks for drug interaction. And it's easy to imagine a future where they will do more, right? And why will they do more? Partly because they will have better tools. Better tools often enable people to move into difficult areas because the hardest parts, some of the hardest parts are made more accessible. And so I think of this as a paradigm of how we would use technology better to enable people who are not at the elite frontier of education, which is who controls most of our society, not only the tech bros, excuse me, and enable people with middle education to do more in software, in law, in healthcare, in design, in skilled repair and construction, right? That would be effective collaboration. Now, you might say, well, what about the end of work? Aren't you worried about that? I want to make a point that I think is missed too often in this discussion. Most transformative technologies are not about eliminating work. They are about enabling capabilities, right? Powered flight did not automate the way we used to fly, right? We just didn't fly. Before the electron microscope, right, we didn't see subatomic particles. It didn't automate the way we did it. We just couldn't do it. Most technologies are profoundly transformative because they enable new capabilities, not simply because they replace or automate what we used to do. Automation is okay. It's not the deepest application. AI can be transformative. So another thing to remember in the rich world, of course, we're running out of people. We're not running out of jobs. And technology would be one way we address that with an aging population. Another would even better would be more immigration from the rest of the world. At least in my country, we don't seem to be moving in that direction. So as my friend Josh Cohen, philosopher at Stanford, says, the future is not a forecasting problem, it's a design problem. We're not just trying to predict, we're trying to shape. Give you an example. My Whirlpool washing machine has more processing power than the Apollo moon mission that landed the first capsule on the moon. And my washing machine is never going to the moon, and it's completely worthless technology. I don't need to start the rinse cycle from Rome. I would still have to go into the laundry room to get my laundry, right? So what makes the technology transformative is not the input, it's the imagination to recognize a new opportunity and use technology to do that. So just to conclude, we are in a future, we have possibilities for automation and collaboration. AI can be used for both. They're quite different. Automation eliminates expertise. Collaboration amplifies its value. Automation is the obvious answer and sometimes the right answer, but it's often the wrong answer. And too much AI is directed at, we've got this. We're just going to solve that problem, as was predicted for radiologists. We don't have this, but we don't need to. In the interim, for many decades, I believe, we'll be using tools to increase the value of human expertise. And if we design for that, we will do it much better, rather than a lot of substandard automation. So we need to recognize where people add value, give them better tools, and use that to multiply the value of what they do. Thanks very much.